Well, a major court case has begun in the US that could lead to the breakup of Meta, the tech company behind Facebook, WhatsApp, and a host of other products and services. Meta is accused of trying to eliminate competitors when it acquired Instagram and WhatsApp in 2012 and 2014. Authorities in the US say the only way to remedy the situation is for Meta to sell both companies. If Meta is found guilty, it would cause a corporate breakup, the likes of which hasn't been seen since the telephone company AT&T was forced to give up its monopoly in the US 40 years ago. Well, Shaoul Sussman is a legal analyst who specialises in anti-competition law. He was formerly with the Federal Trade Commission, which is bringing the case against Meta. Speaking to him earlier, I asked why the US government had decided to get involved in this case.
Yes, so this case originally was filed during the first Trump administration, then continued under Chair Khan's leadership at the FTC during the Biden administration, and now finally we're seeing the trial 4 years later, and it involves the acquisitions of WhatsApp and Instagram back in the early 2010s. And like you said, companies engage in acquisitions all the time. In the US, we have at least 3,000 notifiable transactions each year, but the government still reserves the right to challenge acquisitions if they believe that the acquisitions violate the law, and can also ask courts to unwind those acquisitions and force the sale of those companies.
Okay. And what is the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, what are they accusing Meta of doing? What is wrong with them acquiring these companies?
Yes. So the case involves, again, acquisitions that took place in the early 2010s when there was a shift from the desktop ecosystem where we all use laptops to mobile devices. And at the time, Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, felt that the company is falling behind and that new emerging competitors such as Instagram and WhatsApp are really challenging the company in the mobile ecosystem. They just do mobile better. So instead of competing with the companies, the FTC alleges that the company decided to acquire these nascent threats and basically dismantle or go after this potential threat to their monopoly.
Okay. So are they being accused of having a monopoly? Because, as I say, once again, this happens every day. This is capitalism. So they see something that's happening in their market. They say, well, they're doing it better than us. Let's buy it. This is an everyday occurrence.
Right. So the FTC alleges that they were a monopoly at the time when it came to social networking. And through these acquisitions, they defended their monopoly and continue to exercise that type of monopoly power up until this day. So more than 10 years, 15 years at this point. So the government is basically alleging that through these acquisitions, Facebook was able to protect its monopoly. And they also talk about the harms of the lack of competition in this space. For example, increased ad load on users, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. I'd like your thoughts on a sort of conspiracy theory scenario that seems to be emerging around the case. And it goes like this. Meta will ultimately win this case brought by the Federal Trade Commission because Meta has effectively bought President Trump's favour by paying $25 million to settle a lawsuit that Donald Trump brought after being suspended from Facebook and Instagram, and then donating $1 million to the president-elect's inauguration fund. So even if Meta loses initially, it then appeals this up to the US Supreme Court with its Trump-appointed justices and conservative majority.
So yes, I think there is certainly a risk that under this administration, there might be some deal reached with Facebook in which they avoid being broken up through some court settlement. Last week, we heard rumors that Mark Zuckerberg visited President Trump at the White House. I think that there is a very interesting dynamic taking place right now within the White House and within the conservative movement, where some elements are definitely pushing for a deal and some kind of change of attitude towards big tech. You saw many of the big tech CEOs attending Trump's inauguration, changing their views overnight over, conservative thought and tech censorship. You saw, for example, Mark Zuckerberg say that he was coerced into suppressing speech of conservatives on Facebook during the Biden administration. But on the other hand, there are elements within the White House and the conservative movement, including Steve Bannon and Senator Josh Hawley, that see this type of tactic just as a way to avoid liability, a way to pretend to kind of pander to the conservatives at this moment when they're in power and reach a deal. And they don't view these kind of gestures as genuine. But I think it's very much an open question whether we'll see this case end up in a liability phase where the court orders a spinoff or some kind of sweetheart settlement with the administration.
So let's say the Federal Trade Commission actually wins this battle. Do you think they have other big tech firms in their sights?
So there was really in the last 4 or 5 years a concrete bipartisan movement to hold big tech accountable here in the U.S. So the Department of Justice brought numerous cases against Google for their monopolization of search and the ad ecosystem. One of those cases, Google was already found to be a monopolist, and a court is right now deciding what would be the remedy in that case, including the forced divestiture or spinoff of Google Search and potentially of Android. And in addition to that, the FTC and DOJ also brought cases against Amazon and Apple. The thing that is unique about the Meta case, it is the only case in which the federal government is the only governmental entity that is suing on behalf of the citizens to seek the breakup.
Right.
In the Google, Amazon, and Apple cases, we have also states, and therefore the likelihood of a sweetheart deal or settlement is lower. And that's why the Meta case is kind of more sensitive to those types of deals.
Thanks for talking us through that, Shaoul Sussman.